folks who are coming in, I think when I get done with my quick talk, I'll just thank anybody who's popped in since then and let them know that all they've missed is me talking for a few minutes, which isn't too much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get our introductory slideshow going with a few Zoom instructions from Emily. Okay, so could someone from the staff just give me a confirmation that we're seeing the slideshow? Mm-hmm. Terrific, thanks. Emily, whenever you want to get going on Zoom instructions, seems like there's another group of people coming in. If you want to wait a second, and then I'll advance the slides until we get to the part where I'm going to talk.
Yeah, it looks like most people have their names accurately displayed, but please sign in by renaming yourself on the participants section of the toolbar, or you could type your name in the chat. Looks like most folks have their first and last name on there. This will be useful later on when we break out into small groups and you're talking with your peers.
Okay. Oops, sorry, Emily. Trying to advance my slide. This is typical 9 a.m. Keyboard controls, sorry. So here's our agenda. Sorry for the delay on that, Emily.
All good. Yep, so a brief overview of today. After a welcome from Matt, Jeff will give an introduction. Then we'll break out into small groups, which will be facilitated by a member of our consultant team and either town staff or someone from the Regional Planning Commission. We'll get back together, the small groups will present back to each other, and then we'll have some closing wrap up. So the team today is the Town of Williston Planning and Zoning Office, myself, Matt, Bonnie, and Melinda. We have Jeff Farrell and Associates, who's helping us write the form-based code. And then the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission is helping us facilitate the project, and they will be also facilitating some of the Zoom meetings, breakout rooms. For those of you who are new to Zoom, you can keep your video on or off, whatever is your preference. If you're not speaking, please keep yourself on mute. Click the little up arrow next to those logos on your toolbar for audio or video settings if you're having any issues. Use the reactions section of the toolbar to clap or give a thumbs up. Nonverbal feedbacks are totally welcome throughout this meeting. Press the raise hand in your breakout room if you have a question. We do have live captions enabled in this meeting. If you click the 3-dot more button on your toolbar, you can enable subtitles. Use the chat feature for Zoom help. You can also call me or text me on my Google Voice number, 802-560-5128, but use the chat if you have any technical issues. Lastly, we don't have any telephone participants right now, but if you do call in, you can unmute and raise your hand with *9 and *6. We will be using screen share today, so you can optimize your view. This will allow you to see the participant videos and the presentation. At the top of your toolbar, click View Options, select Side-by-Side mode. Click and drag the slider 2 vertical lines to adjust the size of the camera and the screens. And you can toggle between gallery view and speaker view to see everybody or just see one person. So if you have bad internet connection, keep your video off, close other internet browsers or tabs or phone apps. You can also join on phone audio by clicking the up arrow and using your phone as your speaker and microphone.
Great. I think this is where I come in, Emily. I'm Matt Belanger. I'm the Director of Planning for the town of Williston, and I just wanted to start by thanking everybody for coming out on a warm spring Saturday morning to talk about planning in the Taft Corners area. I spend a lot of time talking about this project and really sort of encouraging people to participate, because I believe it is a once in a generation opportunity to develop a refreshed vision for the Taft Corners area and carry that vision all the way through to the language in the plan and the rules the town applies to new development to make that vision a reality. I wanted to talk a little bit about where we've been so far. Many of you came to our kickoff meeting on March 25th, and many of you after that meeting filled out the visual preference survey on the mytaftcorners.com website or participated in the MAP survey. And there's some numbers for you: 168 participants in the visual preference and 74 written comments for a total of 3,000 words. And on the MAP survey, 338 individual comments on that survey for a total of 9,000 words. And we'll make sure that all of that is available in a digest that you can read on the website and see what your friends and neighbors have been saying about Taft Corners. In the visual preference, just a little bit of what we heard. We're displaying here on this slide the photograph on the top that received the most likes, a walkable streetscape with a wide brick sidewalk, storefronts under awnings. Most dislikes was a fairly blocky sort of apartment building with a parking lot in the front, and a 50-50 split on the row home image that you see on the left of your screen. Visual preference comments, a quick little word cloud about that. We talked a lot about buildings. That doesn't surprise me too much, but we also talked a lot about big box buildings that exist in the town. We talked about parking. We talked a lot about trees, and I'm really excited that the word please is in there so large, because it really speaks to the communitarian spirit of the people of Williston, and that the town is willing to have a civil and polite discussion about the future of this area that has been the source of quite a bit of concern and conflict over the years, but is also a huge opportunity for the town. In the MAP survey, we saw 85 comments with a thumbs up, 123 that were sort of neither here nor there in terms of positive, negative, and 130 of I don't like this. And as you can see on the map, we had comments spread all over the Taft Corners Growth Center area, which was really great, and terrific amount of feedback from citizens there that we can work into our planning process. The most upvotes of comments on the map were related to wanting to connect Taft Corners to the village with a bike path, and the need for sidewalks under Interstate 89 near exit 12 to connect the businesses and hotels on the other side of Interstate 89 to the rest of the growth center. And there's good news on that, because that is actually a project that's coming fairly soon in Williston's future. So we're really excited that people support that idea, since it's going to become a reality fairly soon. In terms of map comments, kind of a lot like the visual preference comments, we talked a lot about parking and buildings, but we also talked a lot about people and bikes. And of course, we talked about traffic, because what would Taft Corners be without that? So we're going to get started with our work today. Following me is going to be a presentation from Jeff Farrell, who's the lead of our consultant team. And then we have our breakout groups and our interactive activity. And before we jump into that, I just want to suggest that, we're inviting you today to be bold in your thinking, dream big about the future of Taft Corners, and think outside the box. And I bring it back to the images that I used in our kickoff meeting on March 25th. This was 1937, 84 years ago. This was Taft Corners. This is Taft Corners today with 85 years of change. What can we do today that people 2 generations from now will be grateful for? So 85 years into the future, when many of us are probably not around anymore, what will the people 2 generations after us look back to this time and say, boy, I'm really glad the people in Williston decided this back then, because the 85 years of change between now and then is coming, but there's an opportunity today to shape it. So that's the thought that I would sort of leave you with as you participate in the breakout groups and presentations today. There's that question mark. What is that next 85 years going to look like? Quick note on process. Today we have our interactive workshops and our charrette kickoff. Throughout the next week, there's going to be daily studio updates available on Zoom. So during the next work week, the consultant team, the CCRPC staff, the town staff, landowners in the area, stakeholders, architects, designers, planners are all going to be taking what we hear today and what we've heard so far and turning it into this vision plan. And you get to have a front row seat to that process. Throughout the week, we'll be talking about where that process is and all of the work that's going on behind the scenes as we develop that. On Saturday, May 1st, a week from today, it's also Green Up Day in Vermont. The Williston town staff will be down in front of the Healthy Living building with spare bags for people who need them for picking up litter on the roadsides as part of Green Up Day. Hopefully also some images of the developing vision plan printed up on some boards that you can look at and give us some feedback on. And it's a chance, socially distanced of course, to be face-to-face with the planners in your town who work on these issues day in and day out. And we'd love to see some of you. We'd really love it if you came to see us as you're out doing your Green Up Day pickup or needing some bags or just want to stop by and actually be in Taft Corners with a Williston planner. So that's Saturday morning from 8 to 1. And then please plan to come back Monday evening, May 3rd, for the work in progress presentation, where we take all of the work thus far and the consultant team, as they have pulled it together, shows it back to you and asks that question, did we get it right? What did we miss? What do you like? What do you want more of in that vision plan? So this is an interactive process throughout, and it's going to be a really exciting week for Williston coming up and starting right now. And with that, thank you very much for coming out this morning again on a warm spring Saturday morning where many of us would probably like to be out in the garden instead. I really appreciate that. Please continue to stick with us on the mytaftcorners.com website. And I'm really happy to end my screen share and introduce Jeff Farrell, who's going to talk through what we're working on today and the overall project.
All right, let me share my screen. All right, are we on?
I think I can see your screen, Jeff. Looks good.
Okay, that'll do it. Thank you for that. We are, I hear Jeffrey Farrell a lot, but it's we've got a great team. The sum is greater than the whole of its parts with this team. I want to launch, picking up on what Matt said. And one thing I'm going to emphasize several things. It might seem like I'm preaching at you, but one is we're talking about the future of Taft Corners, but I would say we're really talking about the future of all of Williston. The two are really tied together. Emphasize again, if you aren't able to join us for anything else, come to this work in progress presentation. It's a chance for a mid-course correction. Let us know how we're doing. I'm going to talk about the process briefly. What we've done so far is the first steps for us understanding the context. We've done a lot of analysis, read a lot of plans, interviewed several dozen of you, attended meetings, and we've done a first step of listening to the community. That's with our visual preference exercises that we're going to show you a little bit more of later. Now we're into the hands-on workshop, which is really about not just kind of taking a poll of everyone, what do you think, but trying to have you engage in a conversation with yourselves, a discourse about what you want to see and weighing pros and cons, and then doing community planning. Up at the top of the screen, it says community first. In my experience, and I think you're a little different, a little bit ahead of the curve in Vermont and in Williston in particular, But in most places through most of our lives, planning gets done, I would say, backwards, and we're trying to correct that. In this process, we're going to put the community first. In most of the country, the norm has been you put the technicians first. You get the guys who do the roads and utilities, and you get all those technical engineers together and ask them what they want. And then the rest of us get to wrestle with it and try and decide what kind of a community we want. We're trying to put the community first, what you want to see, your plan. And after this session, we're going to do our design and due diligence. We're going to take what you give us today and what you've already given us and turn them into a workable vision plan. It's a week of probing, testing, and designing, where we're going to be taking what you give us, and we're going to meet with all the particular people and stakeholders in the private sector, landowners, developers, and then all the people who are involved in the technical aspects, DPW, dealing with the fire, the streets, stormwater, environment. You've probably heard about Act 250. We certainly have. And sewer capacity, et cetera, the utilities. So we're all going to be talking to those folks and saying, here's what we want to do. Here's what the community wants. How can we make it work? Then again, that work in progress presentation, we're going to bring this back to you. And with the developed plans, it'll be a work in progress, but we'll have a lot of drawings along the way. So you can really see what we're talking about. And we're going to ask you, are we on track? Did we get it right? Now, when we all arrive upon an agreed upon community vision, that's when we go to the big next step, which is we write the rules. Once we have an agreed upon community vision, we can write the zoning, the implementation documents or a new form-based code, so that if someone wants to build something that fits the community's vision plan, we want to make that easy. If they want to build something different, well, we don't want to make that easy. That's going to be a much longer conversation, but let's make the good easy. Now, here's what we've done in the past briefly. This is the equivalent of our big kickoff presentation. And by the way, I'm going to show you in the next several slides images of what we do in a non-pandemic environment, not for the purposes of torturing us all with realizing how restricted we've been, but communicating the big idea. Now, we did this online via Zoom, but the idea is it's a lot of information sharing and talking. This was back on March 15th. We did it through Zoom. And then afterwards, we gave you some homework. And as Matt said, a lot of participation. We had the visual preference exercise. And these are going to be posted, by the way. We've all compiled them so you can see the various sizes, the red bar, the green bar for what's liked and what's not. These will be posted on the My Taft Corners website, I believe by tomorrow. And these, we don't treat these as data points, but they give us a really good feeling for what people like and what they don't like. And I think if you can look at those four, it's kind of obvious the things people like: human scale places, not sort of places, not parking lots, not gross, use the word kind of naked, but in terms of asphalt and steel places, greenery, a little bit of enclosure, people places. Also your participation on the map. I'll volunteer this. As an outsider, I was surprised with how many positive things people found here. And we read these and look at these very carefully. So this tells us there's a lot of good stuff and the beginnings of a lot of good stuff already in Taft Corners. Now I'm going to put in perspective where we are right now. This is the hands-on. This is my my soundbite to focus and record the political will of the citizens or of the community. This is meant to be an empowering setup for you. In a non-pandemic environment, we would be literally putting the pencils in your hands. You might recognize some of these people from the other side of the airport in Winooski. we'd be putting pencils and markers in your hands and asking you to just draw right on top of Taft Corners and see what you want. We have to do that a little bit indirectly now, but that's what we're doing. We're going to ask you to talk about what you want to see, where you want to see it. We're going to do this not by having you go to small breakout rooms, but by having you sit, sorry, I flipped that over. We're going to send you to small breakout rooms as a virtual small table in groups to talk about what you want, where you want it, confront various issues. And unfortunately, you can't draw on the map, but we're going to do that for you. Now, here's an example of one map on a virtual charrette we did a few months ago. And don't try to read it, you'll go blind. But this is the group, this is one breakout group, people talking about, specific things they like, they don't like. A facilitator, they're going to be two in each of your breakout rooms who will be taking notes and making marks and drawing, etc., on a map, on this map actually, talking very specifically. And we can zoom in, we have plenty of resolution to record what it is you want. And then this is about you sharing ideas. After those breakout groups, we're going to come back into the big room and have each group talk about their 3 or 4 big ideas to see where we have areas of agreement, where we might have areas of difference. And from that point, and I think that'll be very interesting for you because you will have been working separately in different rooms, but in all cases, people find out how much they have in common. And I think given how much Williston has been having these conversations for a while, I think we'll be pretty far along. Now we're going to take what you give us and then go into our design studio virtually and turn that into a one vision plan. And then we're going to meet with all the people, the technicians. Here's an example from some years ago. Have those technical meetings and meet with, not limited to, but including and we're going to deal with all the contingencies of making this stuff really happen. Again, Monday, May 3rd, although there'll be times throughout the week when you can take a look in and get an update on what we're doing, but absolutely come back on Monday to see where we are. We'll be showing you plans like this, except for the Growth Center. And if we do our job right, most of you will have this kind of a feeling. Yeah, that's my plan. That's what we're aiming for. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about Taft Corners in context. And I think a good way to think of this is, on the one hand, it's, first of all, Williston sits in really close to Burlington. You're in the Burlington metropolitan area. That's something that has its good and its bad side. There are economies and development pressures you can take advantage of and shape and resist. In terms of the green area of Williston itself, it's kind of a small part of Williston, and we think it's appropriate. We think it's very important to try and think about this as helping preserve that. The idea of this being a targeted growth area is keeping the rest of Williston green. And I'll tell you, coming from outside, one of the beautiful things about coming into Vermont is how much you have green. You have towns and you have countryside. Too much of the United States, you don't really have towns, you have kind of a low-level blur, and you rarely get to our beautiful countryside. That's something to be protected. Now, what's there right now? I think I think there's a little disappointment in what you've gotten, but there's good aspects to it, and there's bad. Obviously, a lot of parking, maybe too much. So on the other hand, I think one way to look at what you've gotten, for instance, these buildings that are on 2A, there's really nothing wrong with these buildings. They're trying to be good storefront, like American Main Street buildings. The problem is their environment. So it's a mismatch. These buildings and what's been done here isn't bad, but they're sitting in a negative environment. So it's a contradiction. In this planning process, we have the opportunity with a more holistic look of making those things match up so they work better. And you don't have Main Street buildings sitting on what really looks like a major highway. Now I'm going to talk a little bit how conversely this Taft Corners is big and it's small. If you look at it compared to Burlington, Boston, just the raw area, if you were to build that kind of downtown environment, there is an incredible amount of potential in that area. You could pack all of downtown Boston, Burlington, Montreal, Florence. In that kind of environment, there's an incredible potential to absorb growth in Taft Corners. At the same time, it's relatively a small part of the larger body of Williston. Now, specific information, we've got a lot of great technical information about what's going on in Williston. The topography, the existing buildings, steep slopes, where the utilities are, where the existing roads are, public and private, where the wetlands are, the woodlands, environmental things to be protected and also taken advantage of. These are beautiful things. So let's make positive use out of them. And we also have specific information on your draft official map. So we're well aware of the pre-existing planning efforts, where things have been going and how we can take advantage of those and further them. And just a quick point, the town plan is for this to be carefully designed, pedestrian-friendly mixed-use development and redevelopment, and we're definitely talking about doing that. And as we get ready to sit down together, I want to pose that there are some really huge things at stake here. Really the future of all of Williston, rural and village, as well as town. Big ideas about the environment and ultimate sustainability, housing that people can afford, housing that you could afford, and housing that your children might be able to afford. Also, what kind of development is good for the tax base? And it's all of that fits into an idea about quality of life. We're going to run through three basic big things to consider, starting with transportation and Rick Chelman.
I guess that's my cue to start talking.
Indeed.
Well, I think as we go to you'll see in the next images, those are the traffic corridors presently. The traffic volumes are basically, if you look at the north area up by 2, if you think of that as one value of traffic, it's about double that in the red zone and about midway between in the yellow zone. So out to the access ramp, it is quite busy. Marshall and the connection up to 2A is similar and about the level of a fairly busy Main Street, which sort of fits with that image Jeff showed. And then as you get further north, it's really kind of a slow or low volume Main Street traffic volume. So they are definitely traffic corridors, but up where the cursor is moving right now in the blue zone, it's certainly not a very busy area from traffic perspective. That noted, next slide. We, as Jeff mentioned, we're really, as opposed to this, and I'm not going to read it, this is classic transportation corridor designing, otherwise known as street or highway planning. And it begins with motor vehicles. And when you get done with all of the various wonky things that can help you design a great place for motor vehicles, you end up with, oh yeah, and then there's pedestrians, bicycles, and transit. And I think from what we're seeing in the master plan, from what I've seen in other work around the US and elsewhere, we really need to think about human transport. And if you start thinking about people first, the paradigm gets shifted. And so with pedestrian cars and bicycles first, then we get into motor vehicles, and we need to accommodate them, especially here in Taft's Corner, because regional mobility is an important component. But perhaps, and this is up to you folks, we need input. Should that be the driving component? Next. Do you want to talk here, Jeff?
Yes, slip on. And some points we could talk. I think Vermonters are very sophisticated, more than most, unfortunately, about real issues of sustainability. And for me, it's an idea. There's kind of a yin yang of Taft Corners. And I'd say I really feel that the future of rural Williston is tied up with the future of Taft Corners, keeping development out of the rest of Williston and absorbing it and taking advantage of it in Taft Corners. And a very important point about it's critical what we put in Taft Corners in the future. There's some land that is currently occupied but underused, and that will eventually turn over. It can eventually turn over, but if you just go into Taft Corners and say, do the same kind of development that's been happening in Williston in the past, some low density residential, these are actually developments snipped out of the rest of Williston. Here are these areas that are completely untouched and might develop. If you just put some kind of low density residential cul-de-sacs in there, you will in an incredibly short time be done. It'll be full, you'll be finished. Kind of low level of development like that is not going to really redevelop many parking lots. And once that is full, then you've got those development pressures without affordable housing, without walkability, et cetera. And there's no place else to build. So the pressure builds and the value of everyone's house goes up and affordability is thrown out the window. Again, that idea that Taft Corners and the green of Williston are tied together, sorry. And Anita Morrison is going to talk a bit now about the economics, housing affordability, as well as tax base.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. So the demographics support additional development. Williston has a population of about almost 9,800 people. And that is an addition of 100 to 200 people per year. So the development will be, and the change will be slow and phased over time. The local retail is thriving now in spite of some of the national challenges as we see e-commerce expanding rapidly and some over-retailing of the national economy. So a lot of stores are closing, chains are going bankrupt, but Taft Corners is well positioned to continue to survive and thrive in that environment. And because we have nearby housing growth, there's relatively limited restaurants and small retail space within Taft Corners as opposed to the big boxes. That housing growth could help support some additional retail space in the midterm. On the office side, while Taft Corners has attracted some significant users, it's really constrained by the overall conditions within the region. And so we don't really see an opportunity for significant new office potential for the next several years. Housing, therefore, really remains the greatest opportunities for new development in Taft Corners. And we see the demand has been rationed to some extent with the growth controls so that you couldn't build more than 60 units a year. That may be overlived its usefulness, and you may want to consider changing some of those growth limits so that you don't constrain the ability to redevelop the large parcels where the developer will need to have some confidence that he'll have approvals in the end. And then the housing variety, developing a variety of houses could serve really multiple markets. That's the Williston seniors and empty nesters who want to downsize or move into a different style of housing. It could be the young, their children who want to start their own households, young families, and everyone in between. So we would suggest that you benefit from allowing a whole range of types of housing, not just apartment buildings, but smaller footprint townhouses, triplexes, quadplexes, cottages, small lot, single family units, and other housing types. And that would allow you to focus those in close to the retail and the commercial center. And then finally, from a fiscal standpoint, compact development is much better for the town's fiscal health. It offers a number of benefits, higher tax revenues per acre, more efficient use of infrastructure, less infrastructure to maintain and to construct. And then in the operations of local government, that's less miles traveled, less equipment needed in order to serve the same number of households. So it has a real dollars and cents advantage as well.
And a quick note about an initiative that the Champlain Housing Trust, Evernorth, and the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission are doing, Building Homes Together movement. Wanted to note this because it seems to have big impact. It's the idea that we don't have enough housing in Chittenden County. Their conclusion that we need to build 700 new homes each year, but it makes some points that I think are really worth underlining about when we think about Taft Corners. Lack of housing stymies job growth, and this is available online. A low vacancy rate means housing is not available, drive prices up. Workers leave the county to find more affordable places to live. Affordability is a problem for a lot of people. We're behind, not building enough to meet demand, so those prices keep rising up. And big picture, good housing development preserves our environment in urban areas, preserves the natural landscape. It helps families. People can have shorter commutes and or even walk places like to school. Less money is spent for transportation, so it helps affordability. Certainly less driving can mean the air is cleaner. And compact development improves transportation choices. It makes, I know right now Taft Corners has some bus service, but it certainly could get better when there are people there to use the bus. And I wanted to talk briefly about just what we see in some of the visual preference surveys and talk about potential environments. Obviously, no on the right, more likely yes on the left. And these were really interesting to us. They were about, as I said, about the idea of people places. They weren't directly related to kind of just density or straight abstract things like that. But the idea that design is more important than density. Density without design is awful. But design is very important. And in these spaces, interestingly, the images on the top got about almost equal positive ratings, yet they represent really different ends of development intensity, but they're both places that are focused around people spaces, squares and greens, streets that are really enjoyable places to be, not just things that you drive through. And of course, the straw man for the worst of all possible worlds is that nothing against convenience stores, but that 7-Eleven on the corner is just a place where the making the world something for cars and parking makes it not a place for people. Some images of some possible environment. Note the protected bicycle track here on a busy street, up on the curb, also separated from the cars and the pedestrians. So you don't have people running into each other so much. Transit supportive development. streets that have wide sidewalks, places for people to sit down and enjoy. Good design. It's a combination of buildings and the public space environment. Green streets. Here's that image of a square and a fairly intensive center. Squares, fountains, and I had to throw in this picture, which is it's a place where people go to do nothing in the best possible way. This is actually the block next to mine in Washington, D.C. It's about an acre of a park, and people go there with their dogs, their kids, and sometimes they just lie down and read a book. And these are all the kinds of things that are good for people. All right, we're about ready to go in our breakout rooms. It's really a planning about the future. When we're in these groups, this is a community planning effort, so no one gets everything they want. Everybody gets something. And if you find yourself headed in different directions with other people, focus on the positives of what it is you're after. You'll probably find that you have more in common than you think. All right, Emily, are you about ready to throw us in to our groups?
Yeah, definitely. So a quick overview before we go into breakout rooms. Your Zoom screen will collapse and then reload when you're in the breakout room. There is a button to press raise hand for help if you need me to jump in and help you guys with any Zoom features.
Had a lot of ideas and a hot conversation, not because of disagreements, just because I'd say things just started rolling. The three ideas, and pardon me, because I'd like anyone in the group, because I'm going to leave something out, but the idea of people gathering spaces, parks, I think we include parks, green, and then a second big idea is kind of two in one, the idea of a park once environment, but encouraging walking. And that's a combination of, it has to be interesting. People have to have a reason to walk. They have to be going someplace. And the walking, the environment has to be interesting. It's not just the distance that counts. Several people in the group talked about the difference between walking through a parking lot and walking someplace where there are things going on, walking down a nice street. So I'm sort of stuck on two ideas because it got yanked out. On a specific conversation about the big boxes, kind of quick consensus of consolidate them, put them all in one spot.
Hey, Jeff, do you want to share your map or?
Oh, I will. No. So we got too many. And among the things that are too many ideas to talk about, making Allen Brook an amenity. It's beautiful. It's there. Why don't we use it? The idea of conversations about making it easy for people to get from one place to Taft Corners, good biking and walking routes, which now are a little disjointed. Conversation about if there's a connection on Trader Lane. Let's emphasize bicycles and pedestrians. There's some disagreement on do we allow cars or not, but if we do, keep them slow moving, favor pedestrians and bikes. And excitement about Virginia Tech. And I'm doing the conversation a disservice because there was
excitement about what?
Vermont.
Vermont Tech. Sorry,
He's from Washington. Give him a break.
Oh,
Virginia Tech is right over there, and I didn't go there. Sorry.
Neither did I.
Vermont, the Vermont Technical College, which excitement about the possibility. They're right here now in that circle And there's some discussion, are they coming, are they going? But that could be a great opportunity to leverage more energy, more youth in that part of Taft Corners, and an idea that right across two could kind of respond to that, maybe with a park space, among other things. Anyone else in the group want to fill in any gaping hole I left?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something that we talked about a lot was natural green spaces and gathering spaces. So thinking about
Thank you.
the Maple Tree Place green, and people really enjoying going to Gardener Supply because of the greenhouse. So yeah, community gathering space.
Jeff, I can't read all your comments, but did housing come up in your group?
Yes, early and often, and comments very direct. We need affordable housing. So yes, it did.
We also
Jeff,
talked
can you
about
answer-
mixed use housing that was both commercial, like on bottom, with residential on top.
Jeff, can you explain what's going on at the very top end? There's a comment and a purple line up there.
This one,
Yeah,
that's the Allenbrook, as it's this beautiful amenity, but it's kind of hidden. So maybe along some portion of it, what if we have a trail along there? Now, we did have in that conversation, it was, let's take advantage of it, but also a caution about being careful about how we might disturb the wildlife. So it's not really, the position is not, let's put a trail along 100% of it, but it's a gorgeous thing. Let's not hide it, all of it.
Jeff, one of the words that you noted right away, we talk about more sneaking routes into Taft's Corners. So kind of back ways in with bicycles and pedestrians.
Yeah, trails that almost but don't quite connect. So people, when they bike here, they have to at several places, sneak. They don't have a good route. They're sneaking through yards and crossing streets that are not very friendly to the crossing and things like that to get to a bike route.
I think it's called trespassing.
We call it, I think in Vermont, they call it sneaking.
One of our participants had a really good comment for that. I'll mention it when we get to our group.
All right,
Jeff, can I just add something from our group that,
please.
I think it can all be summed up with, we have an incredible community. And when you look at the sense of place in the village, the sense of place at the Catamount Town Forest, I think it all comes down to Taft's Corners needs a sense of place that kind of matches the greatness of our community. And that's the kind of stuff we talked about.
Mm-hmm. Very, very good. Yeah, thank you.
How about Rick's group next?
All right. Well, did the tech work? Can you see this map screen with some text on it?
Yes.
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 Well, one of the first comments we heard was actually there's apparently some peak traffic concerns north of Williston Road with a queue going off the map, which was the yellow line. And I won't read all the comments, but also similar, can folks actually read those comments?
no,
Just maybe.
Does that make it easier?
Yep.
there you go.
So there was talk about adding senior housing and having, making the overall Taft Corners more walkable place. There was talk about both off-street and on-street biking. One of the comments was that actually a bike rider felt he was not threatened by the current biking on the streets, whereas other people did. This was the comment I just mentioned, think like a schoolboy. I think this was what you were referring to, Jeff. Sort of finding your way around. And having been a schoolboy, I can relate to that. But I shared with the group, and I'll share with the larger group, that we have to also think about all ages and genders. And I know, for example, my sister has a very different idea of what's comfortable to walk to than I do. And so we have to keep that in mind as we plan the overall area. Lots of thoughts about doing infill, sharing some parking, looking at new developments, maybe doing more development in the blue box. And that's not a fixed box, by the way. And they couldn't find any, it was dead silence, all crickets, when I asked if there was anything worth saving. My group, anybody want to elaborate on any of those points?
Two thoughts real quick. One is the only building we're saving, I didn't get my mouth open quick enough, is an old New England style building right in the corner of Williston Road and 2A that yeah, it has somehow survived that one. I don't know if you want to save it or not, but that's the type of building that might be worth saving. And Rick, I just want to mention the other thing I brought up was whether or not that area at the very north of the zone, or not north, but very, far up the top of the map, was worth considering as in its entirety as a park, or largely a park. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Anybody else?
What's that being used for now?
I don't know.
It's undeveloped. It's a field.
Yeah, that may be the where the Alliance, the Essex Alliance Church was planning on going or not.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Yes, that is correct.
That comment came about, there was concern about children not having a place to play. They were playing in the streets, which playing in the street is kind of, either is or isn't a problem depending on the nature of the street, but that's how that was the genesis of that comment. Okay. Next group.
Okay.
How about Justin and Melinda's group?
All right, can everybody see that? Although it might be really almost impossible to read all the labels on there. All right, so some of our big ideas, and some of them are already starting to overlap a little bit with some of the ones that we've heard before. We talked a lot about Maple Tree Place and increasing the vibrancy there. It seemed like the discussion, was about how there's a lot of opportunity there. There's a park, there's a concentration of a couple of retail spaces, but there's not a whole lot in terms of events or anything to really draw you there or actually have you hang out there for any length of time. And, also the idea of making sure that housing is sort of, could be located very close to Maple Tree Place and could be a little bit denser to give some of that vibrancy to the area. But then we also generally talked about affordable housing and the diversity of housing stock just in general throughout the Taft Corners. We also talked about general amenities that would be great to see here in Taft Corners, additional gathering spaces, amphitheater, aquatic center, things like that. Another one of our big ideas or key points that we discussed was including marginalized folks from the community within this planning process and future planning processes, and looking for additional ways to reach out to them and engage them. One idea, possibly, looking at people that ride transit, and maybe that if, by either advertising on the bus or going on the bus and talking to folks there, that we maybe be able to engage a wider community. Also, in general, we talked just focusing on a shift in things being car-centric in Taft Corners to being more pedestrian, cyclist, and transit focused in the future. And then just a couple minor points. We also talked about Allen Brook, taking advantage of that and having some connections and trails to be able to actually enjoy that space. This big red circle around the outside is supposed to indicate a large bike loop around somewhere around the outskirts of Taft Corners that maybe would have spokes that kind of goes into the center, almost like a loop road, except for cyclists and pedestrians. We talked a little bit about, there's a little concentration of some senior housing in this area, but we want to make sure those folks aren't isolated, and so possibly looking at ways that we can add some activity and things that they can walk to from that area. And then looking at the new also Trader Lane in this location, which is slated to come through, maybe that's a good opportunity for, sort of creating a new main street or focusing some activity around there. And anybody from my group want to chime in or add anything to that?
I would just add that I think, our group had generally a really positive conversation, that even if we have some frustrations about the look of certain things right now, a pretty good understanding of the need for some of the development, the dire need for affordable housing, and some really amazing potential in parts here, and wanting to be careful, I think, as we started to dream bigger and bigger, realizing, are we starting to talk about, well, let's put all the box stores in sort of one corner. What is that? What is the impact on all then, on the folks that work there, on the folks that ride the bus there to do the shopping once a month? And really wanting, like Justin said, to get some other voices into the conversation that maybe aren't able to participate in a setting quite like this.
There's a lot of support for mixed commercial and residential, and for having I guess I would add this to the comment about the schoolboy view, having the transit view, because some of the voices we're not hearing now are probably people who are riding the bus to get to work in this area because they can't afford to live in it. But if we stress transit and pedestrian, it will help shift things, and we need to include that in our planning. So we talked about electric bike rental and things like that.
All right, anybody else? All right, thanks, guys.
Well, up next, Keith and Regina.
Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. We had a great discussion as well in our group. We also realized that Alex Daly is going to forever be a facilitator, because he was drawing on the map as as we were going. So I'm going to show you what he drew up as well. But just hitting on some of a lot of similar comments from our group. Some of the big ideas, and this is in no order of magnitude. There was talk about a community center that provides something other than just shopping for this. That this area really lacks something like that. And some of the things that were mentioned in terms of the program of that community center were everything from a swimming pool, community gardens, a theater, dance space, community rooms, and maybe even a building that has sustainable components to it. Another thing that was discussed, a big discussion, was, the preservation of some of the natural open space, particularly on the east side as you come into Taft Corners. Part of that's obviously Allen Brook, but then there's some other areas down to this on the south side of Williston Road. So, the idea of creating that as something that's of value to the community, and so forth. And in a similar vein, more walkable sidewalks / streets that are really connecting residential commerce and the natural spaces themselves. So we had a good discussion about this, the difficulty of seeing 2 and 2A change anytime soon. And the idea that if you can see it, this purple is this sort of loop that's the existing, Maple Tree Place and Marshall and Harvest Lane and Zephyr up here, and that there are things that could be done to improve those streets, but also the idea of new, very walkable streets in here. And again, these are things that we've seen on the other maps as well, the connection of Trader Lane, the connection between 2A, even over to Harvest and so forth. So I'm going to flip to Alex's drawing real quick because he was busy at work there. And so you can sort of see a lot of what his ideas were in terms of lots of connectivity and in a manner that is both a combination of trails but also more walkable streets and so forth, that really creates a network connecting all 4 quadrants together there. So anyway, that was a big thing, and we obviously heard that from other groups too. And then another big idea was the discussion of more affordable housing, and doing so in a variety of types, so everything from, mixed use buildings, that have shops on the ground floor, restaurants, particularly an emphasis on local shops and restaurants, if that would be possible, with residential above, but then also other building types too, as you move away from the more denser areas, but still having that variety of housing types. And also tied in with that, there needs to be a consideration for, private space with regard to the housing, but also usable public space in the form of pocket parks and greens and so forth that really are well designed and integrated into any sort of new development in all those different housing types. So those were sort of our biggest ideas. We have a lot of other smaller ideas on there, but does Regina or anyone else in our group want to add anything to that?
I would. Yeah. I think we talked about the importance of new building being renewable, and how it's a great opportunity for Williston to almost be a model of cool new buildings that maybe have roof gardens and just sort of like, oh, it's modern, but it's really cool.
Yeah,
to the
right.
future.
Anything else?
I'll just add too that there was quite a bit of discussion throughout about thinking about how to maintain and almost not enhance the views, but make them more accessible as sort of like places to go and a thing to do in Taft Corners.
Yeah, very, very good point, Regina. Yeah, there was a lot of discussion, the idea of building up a little bit. I mean, there was even one comment about, if you could build residential on top of Dick's, for instance, the views from there being up a little bit higher, you have lots of great views of the mountains and so forth. So, I mean, that's just one example, but yes, the idea of taking advantage of that through redevelopment. So anything else? All right.
At the risk of like reiterating what people have already said, right now, Taft Corners is really about like doing your errands, commerce, and getting the heck out. And so, besides the structure of the streets, having stuff in there that you want to go to and, and not just like shop and go home, so things that are more like library, community center, indie shops, some, things like that don't seem to be very present right now.
Great comment. All right, I think we are done.
All right, up next, Paul and Taylor.
So I'll go through. Taylor, can you zoom out?
Yeah, I can if my software doesn't crash on us. Yeah.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
So we had a great conversation. Really found a lot of synergy between the group members. Some overarching themes. I'll just touch on those, and then I'll hit on the big ideas. We had a very good discussion about age-friendly places, age-friendly design, so that it was, and this is an overarching theme throughout our discussion, friendly to children and through to seniors. And by designing for that, we'll design for everybody. And then the other piece that came through, and both of these ideas are in support of our big ideas, diverse housing. So that seems to be one that a lot of people are talking about, but a diverse set of housing, not the full range. So trouble with the map?
Yeah, I'm coming. 1 sec.
So the map is important for the first big idea. So you see the red line on Route 2 from 2A heading east. The group was in consensus that would be a great spot for a new Main Street, and that would if we enhance or build that out, that would be a really strong spot for a kind of Main Street activity or Main Street growth pattern. So that's fun. We saw a real need for more public space, performance space, children's spaces, public uses, farmers markets, places to gather for the community, and again, all in an age-friendly spirit. So that they can be scattered throughout the community, but there was a tremendous emphasis on those kind of places. Our approach to the discussion about big box stores was really to provide for flexibility in repurposing the big box stores and underutilized parking, so that as they maybe evolve out of their current useful states or not so useful states, that they could be reutilized or repurposed in meaningful ways that might involve indoor activity spaces, or who knows what the imagination can come up with. So, and then our last sort of big idea, we had 4, was to preserve and enhance the green spaces along Allen Brook and all the other streams in the growth center. There seemed to be a real emphasis on enhancing green spaces in terms of just taking what exists and enhancing it, making it better, making it more usable, and if at all possible, extending or making it more usable. Again is the real idea there. So and I will let the rest of the group chime in and tell us what I missed. Anyone?
Yeah, I'll just kind of chime in on the Main Street idea. I'm definitely a big fan of this this approach, and in part that would involve, really revisioning that giant stormwater retention pond, perhaps revisioning friendlies, and also the sort of excessively large parking lot in front of Shaw's. And so kind of on the southern side of Williston Road in there, really thinking through what could a Main Street style, very human scale row of maybe again commercial and residential mixed, maybe incorporating some of these more playful and performance oriented spaces, and then also creating a kind of connection over to our sort of dream of a sort of a linear, not quite linear, I guess, kind of weaving back and forth park of some sort along and intersecting with the Allen Brook in a respectful way to preserve its ecology, but also allow it to be more accessible to the human residents. So thank you.
Taylor?
Hoping others would speak up from the group because we had no trouble chatting during our hour. No, Paul, I think you hit on the main points pretty well. Certainly talked about a lot of other topics too, but you hit on the main four.
Up next would be Steve and Christine.
All right, let me share, share my screen. Can everybody see that? We're good?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah, we had a good discussion. I think we started out by talking about the necessity of really making this area more interconnected, and a lot of the yellow lines here are maybe areas in which bicycling could occur. I think Rick Chellman's got to advise us a lot about the possibility of putting in bike lanes on some of these streets, the major ones, Williston and 2A. And then also, maybe interconnecting some of these blocks, maybe with the new Trader Lane coming through, as I show here. But so interconnection, especially the idea of building on Maple Tree Place as a place, and then also just making it possible to interconnect with the rest of the area across 2A and actually even going south also. There's maybe a possibility of there is housing right along Maple Tree Place right in here, maybe infilling the parking lot on this side to reflect the housing on the other side of the street. Could be row houses, could be small apartment buildings, a number of different things. And yeah, we talked about housing in a number of different locations, including up at the Essex Alliance Church site, that there's a real opportunity to provide housing, maybe a community center up there. We didn't really figure out where exactly the community center was, but that the need for community centers or a community center was talked about. And there is a variety of housing types up here already, which was interesting, of various different scales, row houses and small lot houses and so forth. So building on that kind of diversity of housing would be good up there. Increasing the green spaces, as was it Megan who was talking about enhancing the environment around the retention pond here. That was discussed also. This area here could possibly be developed as a park. Let me just see what, forget the, park and maybe some housing in that area as well. Then the idea also of creating entryways off of Again, Rick will have to tell us what the viability of creating main streets out of Marshall or 2A or Williston, but certainly there's an opportunity to provide more walkable, commercial, quieter locations perpendicular to these streets as entryways into, say, Market Tree Place, with maybe some buildings built onto the parking lot, for instance, right here. This is just some examples, or Trader Lanes over here. There's actually a restaurant right at this location that is already setting the stage for some kind of transformation like that. And then there was a discussion about the Panera Bread block, that whether or not that's a good location for that kind of Main Street environment on a street like this. Again, we're going to have to defer to Rick about that, but the relationship of these buildings to the street is a good one, to public space, that could provide as a model for other buildings in the area. And my team, does anybody else have any further comments that I missed?
Well, I'll just add, Steve, I'm here to help. I'm not here to promote my own ideas. So you use my name quite a lot. So I'm a resource, but these are Williston ideas, not Rich Hellman ideas.
Right, exactly. But if we want to create these streets, we're going to have to know how viable.
I'll do all I can to help that.
Right, good. Thanks, Rick.
Can I make a comment?
Mm-hmm.
Talking about the potential for housing across from existing housing, low-income housing, there's no amenities. The housing that's put there now, and to duplicate that on the other side where you're backed up to a building, it seems to me a perfect environment for a slum. Because there are no amenities for those people. So I would try and steer away from that and provide housing where it's where there are some amenities for them, including privacy. But I do like the idea of the building around the retention pond and enhancing that. And I think if we could acquire the friendly site and extend that green space right to the corner there, we would extend and connect it to the square green space to the south, and then another green space below that, then connect it right to this wildlife area back here. Then, yeah, and connect all that greenery right to the heart of the Taft Corners.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I hear no more comments. I think we're done.
That was all 6 groups. Thank you, everybody.
I see Jeff has his hand raised. Jeff, do you want?
I'm going to try and do a summation, which is dangerous here, but I wanted to let everybody know, just as among the team and the facilitators, we're really impressed. This is a great effort and an incredible grouping of ideas, and really positive. And it shows that Williston has been having this conversation for a while and thinking about what they want. You've given us I won't curse, but a blank of a lot of information to work with. I could try and sum it up now and you know, hit, say that the high points that I saw, which things like preserve and enhance the green, and that's a lot of sub points to that. Take advantage of it, protect it, etc. Parks, gathering spaces, housing, diverse housing, including affordable housing. And it goes on. I'll start to leave things off. Walkable streets, wide sidewalks that get plowed during the wintertime, etc. But the transit-centric development, enabling transit, all of these things really work together. There's a real synergy to the things we've been hearing. But the main thing I want to convey is you're not going to be dependent on just my conception of what everybody's saying. We're now going to start working together. We're going to get on a Zoom and start putting your ideas together. There's a term that we used to use. I'll share it with you, even though it's not very politically sensitive. But the idea that what our next step is the Frankenstein, that we take all the stuff you've given us, and we start putting it together into a whole. And by the time you're done, it will not look like Frankenstein's monster, but I don't know, pick your movie star that you like. We'll make it in something really positive. You've given us so much stuff. Please, and Matt can follow up on things I leave up, but please follow up during the week. I think a lot of you will be having direct contact with, and there are going to be several opportunities when you can look in and see what we're doing. But I want to say thank you. I think you should give yourselves all a round of virtual applause. Let me see here.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. From my perspective, this has been a wonderful interaction, and we look forward to seeing you during the rest of the week. And as I keep saying, especially on Monday, the 3rd at 7 p.m. Thanks, Matt.
Great, thank you, Jeff. And thank you, Williston staff, consultant team, and CCRPC for all the work that you've put into this project thus far and all that's coming. But really, really from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Williston community members, for coming out and being part of this process. I hear a real sense of ownership of the community over this critical part of the town, and investment in it, in your time and energy and ideas. And I think to the charge that I gave in my introduction, what will people 85 years from now be grateful for when they think back? They'll be grateful that you came here today. They'll be grateful that you said what you said and did what you did. And they'll be grateful that you continued to participate in this process throughout the week and the months to come as we develop this vision and turn it into the toolkit the town needs to make it a reality. And I did want to mention a little something about the town's toolbox and toolkit, and it's an apt metaphor, because if you go into my basement and open the toolbox, there's about 100 things in there. And that's true for Williston's toolbox too. There are a lot of things that the town is working on in a whole bunch of different dimensions that relate to what we talked about today. So when we're talking about a community center for Taft Corners, know that there's a planning effort in the town about a community center, that it's in our capital budget to scope out what a community center should be, what kind of amenities it should have, and where it should go to best serve the community. Know that when we're talking about being bikeable and walkable, that we've had a mobility group spun off from the Planning Commission for the last year and a half, working on this official map project and mobility planning project to talk about those issues specifically. There are all manner of road improvement and construction and intersection improvement projects in various stages of development throughout the town. And we'll keep trying to, as we hear things come up in conversation where some of that information might be relevant. You know, we talked a little bit today about bike and pedestrian connections between the village and Taft Corners, and know that there's a scoping study out there and some plans to continue to work toward that goal that are already moving. And we want to keep bringing all of that back in so that folks understand that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick just to show everybody the upcoming schedule again. And then we will send you on your way for today. So, you know, as Jeff mentioned, we've got our daily studio updates coming throughout the week. The team is going to be working intensively starting Monday, and each evening we'll make an update available at 7 p.m. on Zoom. We'll also make recordings of those and get them available on the My Taft Corners website if you want to catch up later on. A week from today at 8 in the morning, you'll be able to find your local town planners out in front of the Healthy Living building at Finney Crossing, right in the middle of Taft Corners. If you need a Green Up Day bag to put your trash in, we'll have those. But if you want a chance to just chat with a planner, we'll be there to do that as well. And then please set your calendars for Monday, May 3rd at 7 p.m. on Zoom to attend the work in progress meeting and see and hear the results of all of your hard work as the team works on that vision and brings it back for community input and review. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming out today. Again, it's been a really exciting morning for me. I've really enjoyed it. I hope to meet many of you in person as this project moves forward and we get into the summer. And please keep in touch. Any final thoughts from anybody else on the team?
I'm just seeing this question from Marcy about will public be able to ask questions at the daily studio updates throughout the week?
I think we should be able to make that happen. And I would also say that if there's a challenge with making it to those daily updates, emailing myself or any of the other members of the staff who can get it to the right person, we'll try to publish what we can on the website in the Q&A document that we've been working on so that everybody can see that. Jeff, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, we might not be able to answer them in real time, but we will get you answers.
Great.
Just to clarify, those daily updates are Monday through Thursday, not Friday night.
Sorry, that's right.
Just put this in the chat, Matt, but I know you're probably looking at multiple things on your screen. This may already be in the works, but if there's a way to put a very succinct summary of the daily updates and then the link in the front porch forum, I think we're just going to reach a so much wider audience than if it requires folks to email you to get the update. So I hope that there's going to be daily communication this week on where things stand and then resources for people to dig further.
We can make that happen.
Thank you.
Yep, we also have been updating the Facebook page, so go like the Williston Planning and Zoning Facebook page. And if you know of any community groups or group leaders that we should get in touch with to share this information with, let us know and we can include them on the email list.
Chapin, I see you have your hand up.
I put this in the chat, but I wanted to be sure to give a nod to the people who helped make Maple Tree Place happen in the 90s, the early 90s. Pyramid Mall owned that part and was going to put in a typical American mall, and a group called Citizens for Responsible Growth entered negotiations with them, and they were hashed out very difficult process to get what's there that has any residential at all and that is laid out the way it is. And I feel like from the comments I heard today, we're able to build on that. Whereas if it had been a typical mall, we would be treating it the way we're talking about the big box stores in Harvest Lane, which is, well, we don't know how we'll get past it. So I want to give a nod to that work. And that probably speaks to the importance of today's work.
Yes, I think we're partially standing on their shoulders. All right, so is that a wrap? I'll say the next thing for the consultant team and the staff is we're going to maybe get a drink of water and then sit down and start working.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.